Hey, it was super rad having Brian on last week. And I don't know if you saw it, but I actually did some manipulation to our spreadsheet for like our editorial calendar. And I got a list of people on there in no particular order, just put names on the list so that we know when they're out there. And it's for everyone kind of watching the pre-show right now. It's good to have you. Or if you're catching it on replay, that's cool too. But Ryan and I have been talking about having some more guests on the show. We got a list of folks we reached out to on TikTok and other places that are jazzed to join us. So we've been working to like figure out how to come up with a schedule for when to have people on. So I got a whole Calendly. I don't know if you've ever played with Calendly before, but I've got a whole Calendly thing set up. So I can just send that to people and say, you go pick your time, whatever date's available for you. So I'm going to manipulate that a little bit. And then they can just go basically, the only thing that's on there is the Thursdays we want them to book for. They pick the one that works for them and boom, they're done. And we just know when they're going to be on. And then it just becomes easy at that point. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really, really cool.
It'll be. I'm stoked because several of the people that I messaged they're people who have a lot more followers than like I do on TikTok. But they were like, "Oh my gosh, you want me to be on your show? Oh my god, I would love to." Like very genuinely excited to be on someone's show, even though they have a huge following. And it's funny because I always see it like, "Oh, that's this person who's got so many more followers. They're not going to listen to the little people." And they're like, "Oh my god, no, I so want to." Sweet.
Hey, I mean, and it's funny too how it's like sometimes you can attract really big names just by reaching out, like Trek Yards, which is like a pretty good, good sized YouTube channel. I mean, it's not a Mr. Beast or something, but it's a medium sized audience. They had Mike McCann, who is the creator of Lower Decks, come on the show just to talk about the ships that were being featured in Lower Decks. And I think it's amazing how you have a lot of creators that are also connected to the fans in this way. They're fans themselves. And so then, you'll see them pop into like small shows. I even see that in like fantasy football YouTube as well, where it's like, I think it was Tom Grossi that who does a show on the Packers. And he was invited to go to see the Packers, visit the team. It was really, really cool. Like I think it's great that we're just reaching out, and it seems like people are always really excited to talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm pretty jazzed about it. So we'll have some guests coming on here soon. This week it's the two of us. We're gonna take it chill tonight. We got some cool stuff to talk about. We're gonna be on break next week because I'll be on vacation, and then when we come back, we'll have our next guest, which is, and I don't want to bury the lead because it's just fun. Chris from the Dark Side Divas podcast and also does Dark Side Marvel and a few others. Chris is going to be on the show with us when we come back from break next week. So that'll be really cool. And got a nice little lineup coming up after that. So much more to come. All right.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, dude, I'm jazzed. Should we jump in to the show?
Yeah, let's jump in. Let's hit it.
There we go.
Hey.
Feels good. Feels good to be here, dude. San Diego Comic-Con was last week, and thanks for everyone who's here right now. If you're catching this at any point in the future, San Diego Comic-Con 2022 basically wrapped up last week. So that gives you a rough idea of when this, if you didn't see the date and timestamp in YouTube, you know when this roughly happened and kind of the things that are going on. So we thought we would do tonight is spend some time talking about what both of us saw that happened and came out from Comic-Con, what we're excited about, talk that through a little bit. We probably won't get to everything. We'll try. There's always so much that happens at these events. And one of these times we're actually going to go to Comic-Con. I've never been to it. I've never been to it before. So one of these times we'll
Oh no, I personally, I can't wait. Like it's been something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. My wife's cousin, Tia, she's been going to it for years. She's huge in the anime manga community that's also there. So I think that, and I could be wrong. And excuse me if Tia's watching this, and I merged anime and manga. I know that that's two different things. So I apologize if I've like.
Well, we lost those communities now. Sorry. Thing. No, kidding.
No, exactly. But her stories of that experience are always amazing. Everyone that I talk to who goes to that, it's amazing. And by the way, like Jeff, I feel like I feel like I need to say, like, I my throat is fire. So I apologize in advance to everyone that's listening in my throat right
No,
now.
we're
So
totally
thank
leaning
you
into it.
so much.
I said it ahead of time. We're just gonna go with like a whole Wolfman Jack vibe tonight. That's what it's gonna be like. You just don't have you don't quite have the white
Yeah, I gotta
stripes in
get
your hair and your beard. But you know what? We're gonna
no.
run with it. You got a good sound. I like it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Robert's here with us too. That's awesome.
Good deal.
Hey, Robert, how you
But
doing,
yeah,
buddy?
I've been to probably every other major comic book convention in California, and the only thing that's ever hit me on getting down to SDCC, and I don't know if this hit you too, Jeff, but one, it's like trying to get the tickets, and I've been in that pool trying to get the tickets, and then one time we were all like at I think a company, like a convention down there in San Diego, a company convention, and I think we were going to try to get in right after it, and we couldn't. It was like it's almost like there's something that's holding me back from getting from here to SDCC, and I've like I said, I've got to every other major comic book convention.
All right.
So yeah,
So
killing me.
we make it a mission for the Kessel Chat in 2024 to get tickets and go to San Diego Comic Con, because that would be, well, and you know what? That could be a good mission, because I want to work on I've never built cos before.
Yeah,
I have a costume that I bought for Halloween a few years ago. That's my black. They're Jedi robes, like an Anakin Skywalker sort of Jedi robes. But I really want to make a High Republic set of robes, the brown with the gold stitching. But I don't know how to do it. I've never
nice,
sewed. I'm like, oh,
nice.
this could be a compelling reason to build like the High Republic Jedi robes before we go to and try to get our tickets. Maybe we can use this as a way to like beg, borrow, and steal from people. Like, please, sir, may I
Oh,
have a pass?
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I'm former press, so I'm open to using like anything that we can to get in. The thing that I love is when people build like their own, like one of the things that I did when I was catching up on Comic Con this week was I always love seeing like the costumes, like the things that people invested in, because for a short amount of time, that was a thing that me and my daughter were always trying to do, and it was because my daughter would come up with these elaborate ideas for Halloween, and she'd say, "I want to be Gordon from Thomas the Train," and I was like, "Gordon?" And she was like, "Yes, I want to be an entire train." And so I had to construct a train that could like fit over a 3-year-old, and one that she could like actually move, and then also made sounds and the wheels moved. And we did that. And then the next year she said, "I want to be R2D2." And so I
You're
made
like, I'm all about
R2D2.
that.
Oh, 100%. And in fact, the R2 costume that she had, it was like, it looked great. I can, if anyone's curious about those plans, leave it in the comments. I'll tell you exactly how to build an R2D2. What was funny is that the costume was freestanding. So like when we were done, R2 just sat in our house, like just like in the corner. And but it was a lot of fun to build those things. I'm always impressed with people that build that, like, and I think of people like Adam Savage who go to the extreme and build these amazing, just elaborate costumes. But yeah, I'd love to hear more of like, if you've ever been like
Uh-oh.
oh,
Oh, there we are. You're coming back.
no, sorry about that.
It's
I
okay.
was asking if you're ever like, oh, I gotta buy that stormtrooper armor.
I've never, it's never happened to me. Like, I will say though that when we were at Disneyland a year or so ago, and we went by one of the shops to buy like the Droid Depot, I saw the full size R2 sitting there. I'm like, and I said, babe, it's only $2,500. I mean, this could be a thing. And the look of, she doesn't wear glasses like I would do, but the look of like, it just kind of like, I'm not even going to dignify you, and just walked away from me. I'm like, but we can afford it. We can make this a thing. It
Oh,
can
I
be a
love it.
purchase. I'm like, I'll just get rid of the air conditioner. I don't need air conditioning, right? And he can just sit right here. It'll be fine, right? Clearly, we did not buy R2D2.
Oh no, I mean R2. I mean, I will say like outside of like costumes, the thing I've always wanted in my house is, and I mean, call me Jabba the Hutt, but Han Solo and Carbonite. I remember in 1999,
clearly.
they had a big contest at Taco Bell where you could like, it was when the prequels came out, and it was this big contest, and like, oh, if you ate these tacos and brought in like what was it, Pepsi, various Pepsi products, you had a chance of getting the Han Solo and Carbonite. And I was like, oh man, like I need that. But yeah, By the way, like I see this. Someone needs to design an R2 AC unit. Yeah, like there's a misbranding opportunity.
It totally is.
You
And
know,
actually, so Joanna, thank you for being here. Specifically, I'm not going to do R2, but it's been on my project plan list for a bit now to build like an enclosure to go around what is basically a droid in the corner of my room that would look like Chopper from Rebels. But I've been stuck on a couple other projects, and I just finished my first piece of furniture, so that's now done. And now I'm like, all right, I'm ready for my next project. I'm like, I was just actually, as you were talking, I'm like, how would I do minor cuts on the backside of a piece of wood so I could bend the wood a little bit to wrap around the slight curve of the front of this? I'm like, okay. See, I got to build a droid. I got to build a droid housing to go around that. I'm just not much of a painter, so it's probably not going to look very good, but details.
but still, I love this is the creativity that you get at San Diego Comic-Con. Jeff, a bunch of stuff came out, and it wasn't just Star Wars stuff. It was like so many cool things that happened in Comic-Con this last week. What was like the things that were, your top of mind, to borrow a corporate phrase?
To get the good book out. So it's interesting. I tried to keep up as much as I could. The things I was mostly focused on, because I knew you'd be focused on things a little bit differently than I was, which is exactly what we want to do. The comics and the High Republic books were a big showcase for me because I really wanted to learn more about what is Phase 2 going to look like, which is called the Quest of the Jedi. So Phase 1 was called the Light of the Jedi. Phase 2 is called the Quest of the Jedi. And it backs up 150 years before Phase 1. So Phase 1, I think, starts about 200 years before the Skywalkers, basically before Anakin was born. So it takes place about 200 years before Anakin is born. I think it's something right around there. And Phase 2 goes back another 150 years before that. So while Yoda is around, I don't think he's going to play a prominent role. He didn't really play a prominent role in Phase 1 anyway. He was there a bit. But I think he will come back around in Phase 3. Anyways, I focused on all the books and comics that came out. The one thing I will call out, though, that from a TV perspective that I'm really jazzed about is The Acolyte, which takes place at the very end of the High Republic era, is all they've told us. They have one announcement, and it was Amandla Stenberg, who played Rue in the Hunger Games. She will be the lead character in The Acolyte. But what's interesting is, and I don't think I heard them say this, is the comment has been made by the director and the producer of the show that it will be, they kind of, some people saw it as overselling a little bit on like, it's a female-led cast. And what the director basically says, what we mean by that is our main protagonist is female. So female-led. But what I didn't hear is a clear connection that Amandla Stenberg is the main protagonist. I don't think I heard that anywhere. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm very curious if you heard anything different, because I'm like, so is she going to be the good guy or the bad guy, or not bad guy? Yeah, guy is the wrong word. I'm sorry. The bad character or the protagonist or the antagonist? What am I doing? Just
no.
Better words, protagonist and antagonist.
No, actually, I've been thinking of, so every time I hear of a new show that's coming out, I always think about the show that I would make. And when The Acolyte came out, my first thought is, what I want to see is a Jedi version of The Departed. I want to see like a thriller. And when you think of The Acolyte and you think of like what that could be, which is like a dark side person that's having to live among the good. And that you have someone who's trying to track down and find the good person. I'm sorry, they're trying to track down and find the Sith, and the Sith is trying to make sure that they don't get caught by the Jedi. It's hiding in plain sight. And there's like a bunch of psycho thrillers from like the late 70s, early 80s that I feel like go untapped when it comes to like inspiration for new material. And when I saw this show, I thought, oh my gosh, like this could be like a really cool thing. And so when I saw that casting news, my first thought was, is this the hunter or the hunted? Like which side of the coin is this character actually going to be on? And again, I'm just projecting what I think would be a really interesting show. Mm-hmm. And again, hopefully a short shorts show. Like I'm all for these shows being really short,
Yeah, I agree.
like a season or two, and tell a quick story, and then drop it, tell a new story.
Yeah, I
So
totally agree. I love that idea too of because the all the recent directors and writers and things have been really good at doing the not the fake out, but sort of whatever you think is going to happen is likely not what's actually happening here. And so I like what your comment about the hunted or the hunter. I'd be very curious because likely it won't be that binary. It won't be she's either the hunted or the hunter, and that's just all there is. There will be more nuance to it that makes that, well, she's this, but not really. But or this, but it's different than that. Like I love that idea because it lets us play with character breadth more than simply saying
yeah.
you're bad or you're good. Because I'm gonna be honest, that's not that interesting to me. Like you're the bad guy, bad person, or you're the good person. Okay, cool, but the person who is evil is just that superhero who just doesn't work well on a team to the extreme. That's the bad.
Mhm.
That's the bad person. Like it's not that they're actually evil, but they don't work well with people so much that they have one unique goal they want to get to, and they won't work with anybody. That basically everyone else says you're the evil person. They're like, I'm not evil. I'm doing the thing that I think makes the most sense. You're all the ones who won't follow me. Like it's breaking.
So what you're saying is it's in your point of view. I mean, again, we keep coming back to this.
Damn it, Obi-Wan. Yes. So other than the Acolyte, the things that I'm most jazzed about is all kinds of new announcements about the High Republic. So one of the first books that'll be coming out. There's a bunch of others that have already been announced. So I'm not going to bring those up because those were announced before I've actually pre-ordered most of the books or the good chunk of books that have already been announced for the High Republic. But a new one that was announced is called The Battle of Jeddah. It's an original audio drama written by George Mann. It takes place again 150 years before Phase One. And what's interesting is it's specifically about Jeddah that we saw in Rogue One. And there's a scene where you see a flyover and you see what looks like a statue of a Jedi, but laid in the ground and half covered in sand or dust. Sand. What's interesting about that is in the High Republic era, Jeddah is a moon. We knew that already, but it's a moon that is a sacred place for Jedi. There are Kyber temples there, but primarily what we learn is that Jeddah is a place that Jedi go when they need some space to kind of get away and go meditate for a few days and reconnect with the Force and it's like a meditation planet or moon for them to go to. It's a sacred place for them to go to. There aren't like people that live there. It's a Jedi planet basically. It's very sacred to them. And so to hear of a book called The Battle of Jeddah is really interesting to find out like what actually happened. Like, are we going to actually learn what happened that created it to look the way it does in Rogue One? I'm not sure because they haven't given us much more detail, but that's really fascinating to me that it's this whole other set of stories, but that we get to see it, that we've already kind of seen a slight glimpse at. Something you've said before, those comments, either the comments that are interesting or the somebody else heard say the nonsense that you hear that someone just says like a Gingerson's pelt, like that said in Solo, like these things that like don't have to make any sense now, but they can be tapped into later as a like, hey, that thing you heard once, this actually is what happened, the backstory behind that. But I like that they would wait to do something like that until there's the right time to tell the right story behind it. Not just let's go make a thing because we showed it in Rogue One. Like, no. Let's do it if there's a story to tell there that is interesting, that works everywhere else. So I'm excited to see this because George Mann did a great job. Actually, George Mann is one of the people who wrote the Life Day book that came out at the end of last year. It's part of the High Republic, but it's meant to be like their Christmas book essentially that came out with Stellan Gios on the front. So that's going to be interesting. And then a whole bunch of other books and comic books, especially comic books that
a lot of comic books coming out. And I mean, I will say this, that was also nice to see for a comic book convention, as big as it is. It's surprising how little comics are discussed.
Yes.
And it's okay. Like I know what San Diego Comic-Con is now. Like it's just too big. It's multimedia. It's everything. You've got panels, you've got a lot of stuff, you've got access to major movie productions. I get it. But it was nice to see a little bit on comics.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually thought it was interesting that from a Star Wars position, of what was being announced. It was quiet. You got the news on the Acolyte. You got a little bit of news on some of the other things, but it was mainly on the books, the comic books, and a lot of the other like side media that they had been working
Hmm.
on, which I thought was really smart. Yeah, they even talked about like toys that they were going to be producing, things that were coming from the Black series. I was really like bowled over because that is very comic book convention. And I'm not like necessarily a purist, but I was just like, whoa, like this is like what normally is talked about at a comic book convention.
Hmm.
Action figures, that's like what's on the floor at a comic book convention.
Right? Yeah, it got me really excited seeing all these different focus points on not. I mean, the comics and the books, absolutely. Specifically for me though, I'm really doubling down on the High Republic era as this whole
Mm,
like bastion of new stories that we get to see with similar themes than we've been used to, but told in a very different way. I'm really excited because it's opened up all these doors to stories that can connect with the current audience and bring
nice.
in people into a Star Wars that nobody else knows. Like the 20 something or the 13-year-old or anyone that says, Joanna. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Much love, Joanna. The person who's like not super into Star Wars, like, where should I get started? I'm like, oh, I can go back and watch the movies. It's like, honestly, you like to read? Cool. The High Republic is a great set of news stories that, unless you started reading them, nobody else knows. No one else has gotten into them. There's no beyond that. It started a year ago, and we're all getting it for the first time. There's no,
Yeah.
hey, I've been a fan for 30 years, and so I get, no, nope, nope, you don't. Like, this is all brand new stuff. I love that. Not only does it allow you to have a whole new thing that people can get excited about, it also allows the writers to do a really good job of bringing in that audience and letting people see themselves. I don't want to get too political or too much into like the terms I don't really care for, but like the term woke, I don't like that term at all, for a lot of reasons, because it's a label on top of a stereotype that I think is problematic to begin with. But the reason I bring up that word is I've heard people attribute that word to what the High Republic's doing. Like, there's a lot of there's at least one non-binary character in the High Republic. There's multiple people who don't identify as cis or as straight. I mean, there's lots of stuff like that. And I've heard people become, oh, Star Wars is becoming woke or whatever. I'm like, no, Star Wars is doing what Star Wars, like Star Trek, has always done. It's trying to be reflective of the audience that is actively reading these things now. So those people can see themselves in the stories and then connect better with those stories and get more enjoyment out of them. I really appreciate that they are doing that, and things that are in our culture today that we need to all be talking about and be more accepting about in general are being actively and intentionally written into the High Republic stories, broadening the scope of who can then see themselves in these. And I think that is not just from a writing standpoint, but just from a cultural standpoint is beyond amazing.
Yeah, I think that and by the way, like kudos to Disney for also bringing in a lot of diverse talent. One of the things that diverse talent to write the High Republic books. So one of the things that I'm just going to lay this out here that happened at Comic Con that like meant like a big deal to me was they were talking about the upcoming Black Panther movie, Wakanda
Beautiful
Forever.
trailer, by the way. I was in tears
Amazing
watching that
trailer,
trailer. I
and oh
heartwarming.
no, it was great. It was really good, really really cool. I'm really interested to see the take that they're going to be making with T'Challa and like how they're going to handle that. Like, can't wait to see it. But there was something that happened, and I talk about this with my wife all the time. And you're talking about diversity and what that means. And I wouldn't, and I don't. If people say woke, like I don't really care. Like my big thing on this is that I love, as someone who comes from a diverse background, and people who know me, I'm Mexican. I love seeing um, uh, us in the future, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I always like when I get to see like amazing stories that are almost connected to my culture be shared in mass. Like it used to be that you'd have to search for something like for water, like chocolate. You know, you'd have to like go out and find these stories, and now they're like everywhere, and it's because of Alfonso Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro, who can like bring a lot of like the aesthetic of the culture into their
Mm-hmm.
movies. And so when you watch something like Roma, oh my gosh, like that's just amazing, you know? And so where I'm going with this is that it's easy to not be aware of it, but um in the upcoming Wakanda Forever, they've cast as Namor a young Mexican a Mexican actor, and he went at Comic Con when this was announced. He took the mic and he said, "I just want to let all of those people that are back home know that diversity matters, and that's why I'm up here. That finding that equity, that's why I'm up here. That's why I have this
Mm-hmm.
role." And I want to tell everyone that's back home, look at me, you can make it. And that like meant the world to me. You know, it's little things like that that I shared with my own kids, because I want them to see that prosperity of persistence that comes through, and that it's important that we can also see ourselves in some of these stories, like Star Wars, like the comic book stories. Like to cast this young man as Namor is like unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, this is awesome. And Namor is like what DC wishes Aquaman was. So I'm like super jazzed about this character too. And I'm like a comic book fan. Like Namor's like the first mutant. Like I'll like throw down for Namor. So Namor is what I keep saying, adding an A there for my voice. The thing that you were saying though, Jeff, about seeing that diversity, it's great to see it not just in front of the camera and in print, but also by the writers
Mm-hmm.
themselves,
Yes.
by the directors of these series. It means a lot. And to someone like me, like even seeing someone like Melissa Navia, who plays Ortegas on Star Trek, Strange New Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
My wife knew exactly what I was going to say when I saw her on screen piloting the Enterprise. We made it to the future. We did it. It's
She's an awesome
important to
character, by
see
the
that
way.
represent.
Love
Oh,
her
and it's
character.
important to see that representation
It
there.
is.
Again, I understand for people who aren't accustomed to it that it's an adjustment. It was an adjustment when Uhura was on the bridge of the Enterprise, 1966. Everyone, we're gonna get through it. It's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all good. So yeah, those are my big takeaways from that I got. How about you? What were like the things that really stood out for you?
Oh well, I threw out my thing on Wakanda Forever, which
It
again, like, oh my gosh,
if anyone watching has not seen that trailer, it is absolutely
jeez.
beautiful. I was tearing up very quickly in that trailer. Like the emotion you get across just in the trailer and the music is just yeah, it tugged at your heartstrings for sure.
Ryan Coogler, man, product of Sacramento State University, where I hail from, and also I know he went to film school elsewhere, but I love the fact that he came to Sac State. He is such a great director,
Yeah.
and again, Black Panther was the first Marvel movie that was also nominated for Best Picture. This this story, his art direction is amazing. Michael B. Jordan, his frequent collaborations with Michael B. Jordan are like unreal.
Mm-hmm.
More give Ryan Coogler all of the work.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other things that I really enjoyed coming out of Comic Con, other than the Star Wars news, and I was really excited about what I heard with the Acolyte. I was really pumped about everything that happened with Star Trek. Except for, oh yeah, I'm excited about two things that I'm kind of like on the third. So the first one is the Strange New Worlds panel. Oh my gosh! Like I know that I've talked to you about Strange New Worlds. I'm wearing my Star Trek shirt tonight to rep Strange New Worlds. If you haven't watched it yet, it's like 10 episodes.
It's
It's
great.
on it's on Paramount Plus. I know that that is terrible because you have to get like another service, but it is my favorite Star Trek in 25 years. I was bonding about it over. I'd accidentally uh, uh, called a friend while I was messing around with my phone, and it was a friend from high school, Chris Noyes, who I haven't talked to in years, and he was like, "Oh hey, have you seen Strange New Worlds?" And we sat there and like texted each other back and forth all about Strange New Worlds. It is such a great show. That cast is great. Anson Mount is amazing. I just enjoy it so much because it's great for people who have no background with Star Trek, and it's great if you are a huge fan because there's a lot of little things that are reference points. But they did a great job at using every episode as a theme to describe a concept. So
Mhm.
I loved that panel a lot on Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, I only caught part of it. I need to go back and actually watch the whole thing, but I thoroughly enjoy Strange New Worlds. Like I finally finished the season. It is beautiful. Like it was you the phrase I love that you said about it multiple times is it's just good TV. First off.
Yes,
But as far as
fun.
Star Trek is concerned, they did a great job. The casting is amazing. Every cast member
That cast is
like
great.
the Rebecca main thing though, I didn't notice it until you said something. I was like my glass breaking moment. It was like she's literally ever in the show for like 30 seconds
I'm
and
telling
that's it.
you, like, she had a time clock in the contract. She was like, I can do 5 hours of filming. So you can film
You got
all
me
of
for
these
lunch
scenes.
breaks for a week. So what do you want to
Yeah.
do?
With the exception of I think what it is episode 2 or 3. Yeah, she's barely there.
Yeah.
And again, I like her as an actress. I like her as that character. I was like, why aren't they engaging her more? But yeah, the so what was really cool was in that panel, and by the way, I'll get done with this because I want to get to Joanna's question here. In that panel, the lower decks crew barged in, and the lower decks is an animated series. But as it happens, their voice actors for the animated series look a lot like the characters that they portray, and so as it happens, those actors are going to appear in an episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds,
hmm
and they're going to be dressed as their characters. And then Captain Pike, Anson Mount, is going to be on a animated episode of Lower Decks. This is the type of crossover that I actually kind of like because if they do it right, it's going to be perfect. Which is that Boimler and Mariner from Lower Decks. This is how I hope it goes. They're just in the background. They're in the background of a real episode of Strange New Worlds, and like all the Strange New World stuff's happening, but they're just in the background. And you're like, what are they doing back there? And then on the Lower Decks episode, you actually get to find out what they were doing. That's what I want to see, like that type of crossover.
Like they're in the background. It cuts over to them, and they're just making coffee. They're doing a little Flight of the Concords moment, and making coffee and having this a weird conversation that you're like, wait, what?
Exactly. Yes, yes. That's what I would like. But I'd love to jump over to Joanna's question here. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this? I actually think this is a really good point. And again, I think that the infusion of diversity into not just the players of the story, but the storytellers is really a great opportunity to change up a lot of stories,
Right.
to bring in a lot of different opposite cultural norms. I mean, you still, I think a lot of movies, especially in horror movies, are still just like, they're still like old, like medieval plays that are like, oh, if you do this, you're gonna, if you go into the woods, this is what's gonna happen to you. I'd love to see the stories of other cultures start to permeate into how we tell stories
I
right
agree.
now.
It's not just the basis of like a Grimm's fairy tale, a Grimm's type thing that. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's not what I'm hopeful for. And I think what we're starting to see already is these are not just classic Anglo-Saxon or white American based ideologies that come across in some sort of uh, good versus evil, or you know, whatever it happens to be. Like I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but what I think I'm already seeing, and I'll use the High Republic as a great example of this, is because the people who are writing these things are diverse and they spent a lot of time developing the characters that way. That, to your point, Ryan, that what we get to see is we get to see an influence of those people's cultures, where they come from, their own backgrounds, influencing the overall, as opposed to, and nothing against Legends for Star Wars as an example. Nothing against Legends. If that's your thing, you love it and enjoy it. But there was no cohesivity in Legends. There was no through line that of people saying we're planning this out and people are going to write different books. Whereas with the High Republic, that's exactly what they've done. They continue to do is to actively bring in new authors who are also diverse background, in so many ways, and each of their unique perspectives are influencing the character development, the challenges they go through, the highs they hit, all of those things. And I think it's beyond necessary. It is tantamount to good storytelling. I think it's almost a synonym for good storytelling. If you're not doing that, you're not writing good stories. You're writing stories that are easy. That's not what makes a story something people want to connect with, whether they realize it or not, at least in my opinion. And so I think doing this is exactly what is necessary to take Star Wars, or really anything, the MCU is a great example for movies and TV series, to take those things into a future where more people want to consume them, younger and newer audiences, more diverse audiences can see themselves in it and want to be a part of it and enjoy it. I think that is absolutely critical. If they didn't do those things, this stuff is just going to fizzle out eventually, because if people can't see themselves and connect with the story in that fundamental way, then it's not really a story. It's just one person's tale, and that's the end of it. And that doesn't take you very far. And I don't think that's actually very interesting to begin with.
Yeah, I think that again, I think that there's a lot of things that we could be looking at as far as new ways to tell stories. And I think that by having this intersection of cultural backgrounds, new diversity that's being brought into the industry, I think that that's like a really great opportunity. Again, like I remember having to go and look for these movies, these films, especially in the late 80s, early 90s. And I don't know why, but I went on a kick of rewatching a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I had like Water for Chocolate, like, so easily like in my hands, is because I just got done watching that one again. And, to see things like the American story is often built off of the story of the American West, which is the loner, the individual, and how the individual overcomes the impossible challenge. And it's a simple story arc, and the thing that I'd love to see more of is other cultures don't typically have, well, don't typically, I'm not going to just broad brush it right now, but I'm just going to say other cultures have different ways to tell stories other than the rugged individual that overcomes.
Right.
And while there are stories that are like that, there are other stories that have yet to be told. And that's the kind of thing that I'd love to see, and different ways of telling stories. And again, like, I'm just thinking of things like Bless Me Ultima, or oh my gosh, it's like I'm sitting here like looking at all my books down here, and all I can think of is like a magical realism that that permeates a lot of my own culture's like literature. And that's something that I think would also be really fun to start seeing in more stories.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
The comment you made about the rugged individualism, I kind of think that's a little played out, and it's beyond. I actually played out's probably not the way to say it. It is. What am I trying to say here? Other cultures, most other cultures, if not all other cultures, not only have a different way of telling stories, but I think in a lot of other countries, individualism is not something that is strived for necessarily. I'm not trying to make I don't know that for fact. I'm not a cultural anthropologist. I'm just saying that I have to imagine that in many other countries, many Asian countries, I would imagine as well. I was specifically thinking of that. this odd American drive, classic American drive for the individual who's going to persevere all on their own and make it out west. Like that whole idea isn't a sought after thing in other cultures. In
Oh,
that way,
and
good.
I don't mean to interrupt. Don't get me wrong. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing, like, the rugged individual that does overcome, that beats wilderness. Like, that's a really, like, time honored story. It works very well, but it has been told.
Many
Like,
times, over and
yeah.
over and
Just
over
to where
again.
you're going with this is like, I just want to say it is a great story. Don't get me wrong. Like, there are, Die Hard is that story set in a modern era. One person against a ton of stuff. John Wick is that same story being told right now, and that was told a long time ago with Clint Eastwood. It's a great story. We have seen it like a gajillion times.
Right. You're right. And that's what I'm trying to get to is that's not bad, but it's been done a lot. And other countries, other cultures don't necessarily idolize the idea that you got to do like the goal, the ultimate achievement is to do this on your own. That thought of a person simply doing something on their own and that somehow that is magically the place that every person should strive to get to, that you can make it on your own and, the at the end of, the Breakfast Club, like cool, but I would much rather see these days, I'd much rather see other cultural perspectives on what they think the outcomes should look like and what people actually those cultures strive for, and what does that do to derive or guide a story that is being told. I find that much more interesting personally because one, I don't understand it. It's not a culture I'm a part of. I would like to see what that means to a story that is then told on the screen, in a book, wherever else. The other stuff like you described, I have seen all those. Cool. I've experienced all of that. That's fantastic. So what else? Okay, cool. Great. We've done that. Like get me to the next section in the card catalog at the library so I can start looking at the other things, because I've been in the American history section for a little too long now. It's time to go to the next section, I don't mean to be a
Yeah.
smartass about it, but like that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. You walk into some bookstores now. This happened with a Barnes and Noble. Sorry to call out Barnes and Noble, but one particular Barnes and Noble I walked by had when I walked into some sections, there was like an area of like, like world art history and a couple things like that. And they took up all of about like 10 feet of section. And then there was like 9 rows of books that were all American history books. And I'm like, yeah, see, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because there's a lot more places in the world than there is the one United States of America. We're not actually all of America. We're just the United States. They make it seem like America is the only thing that's in the America. The U.S. is the only thing in the Americas. I'm like, it's not at all. Anyway, I don't want to go on this long tangent. It just my
Oh,
point is that
no.
I
It's
want to
funny.
see
Yeah.
these other diverse perspective stories being told,
Yeah.
because it makes them interesting.
Yeah, and I just like, I'm hungry for new things. I'm hungry for new things. I'm hungry for different stories. Like, and we've talked about this too. If there was one thing, and this is the last thing that came up at Comic Con, and we've talked about this, creative bankruptcy, which is when you've taken a property and you've just like squeezed it for all that it's got, and now you're like, come on, just we need just a little bit more. And that property is Star Trek Picard.
Oh,
I mean that panel. I mean, they were just like, hey, we're trying to limp by here, guys. We know that first season was rough. We know that second season nobody liked. This third season, we're doing what we should have done in the first. We're bringing everybody back, and it's going to be a big, swan song send off of the Next Generation crew. Now, I can't tell you how when Force Awakens came out and I saw Han Solo and Chewbacca come on to the Millennium Falcon and Chewie were home, and my heart, soared, and I was just like, oh, I'm going to go and see old friends again. This panel was the opposite of that. I was like, oh my gosh, these poor people, they're dragging them back out. They missed their boat, I think, in trying to get a really good Next Generation reunion show in the first season. They should have done that. The
Yeah.
first season was
They
okay,
caught a couple
but
parts of it, but they didn't do enough.
yeah, they lost it. And now they're bringing everybody back. Now, does Worf and Geordi and everybody look great? They look great. Gates McFadden, great. Everybody looks great. Their outfits, their costumes. Thank God Worf looks like a Klingon. Everybody looks great. But it just feels so forced. Like, like a group of people that are all just, they're being paid a lot of money just to like get back together for it's like if you forced a reunion of the Beatles.
You know what makes me
I mean,
You know what it makes me
you
think
know,
of? That Family Guy episode where Stewie ends up having the whole cast of the Next Generation and has to entertain them for a
yes,
day. It takes them to a drive-through to order food, and they're all like, it feels like that.
yes, they're all in the station wagon. And Will Wheaton's trying to get food, and Patrick Stewart tells me you're gonna get nothing and like it. This is the thing, and again, I don't think that it's not that the cast doesn't like each other or something. It's just it feels forced from a storytelling
Yeah.
perspective. Like someone did the math in the studio, and the studio said, we need to get the old cast back. Otherwise, this show, we're never going to recoup the money that we're investing in this show. And they were like, got it. We'll get the old cast back. We'll just run them through some type of crazy adventure. And really, at this point, the only thing that would be interesting to me from these people would be there is a movie that's a Canadian movie, and it's like in the Norman invasions or something like that. It's oh gosh, or Invasion of the Barbarians. It's something like that. It's basically the Canadian version of The Big Chill, and it's about a group of people that are getting older, and they're beyond their idealistic days, and now they're kind of older, and their values are somewhat compromised, and it's a series of conversations, and incorporates things like dealing with their pending deaths. This is the story that that's like the only story that you could really tell these people, which is this is an older group of actors.
Mm-hmm.
Why not have them face mortality? Why not have them talk about that in where that story could go? But I don't think they're going to do that. It's probably going to be there's some intergalactic threat, there's some red matter, I don't know what, and then they have to go and solve it. And instead of the thing that made Next Generation great, which was using their minds and collaboration to solve problems, their collective wisdom together, working together, I think this is probably going to be something like, they're going to shoot phasers and stuff. And yeah, I can't. It's going to be opposite of Strange New Worlds. So my two highlights, Wakanda Forever and Star Trek panel, and then my oof. I don't know how this one's going to go. Star Trek Picard, and that should have been the thing that I love, and it's not.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, as we kind of wind down for the evening, to give Ryan's voice a little bit of a break, because it's a bit of a break. This last comment from Joanna. Joanna, I really like that you said this, and not to talk too heavy on the High Republic, but I'm going to, because I love it absolutely. I've been actually, interestingly enough, I decided that I wanted to double down on it and help people get ready for Phase 2 in October. So if anyone's interested, I've been doing a series this week, and I'm going to keep doing it every day until the High Republic, until Phase 2 releases. I'm doing a 1 minute TikTok video on a character, and then a person or a place or a ship or whatever that's in the High Republic that we met in Phase 1, to give people like a little taste of like, who are these characters? If you haven't read anything yet, you can get a little sense of who these different characters are. And I bring that up to come back around to Jonah's comment. And I love this because in the High Republic, we see such a different Jedi Order. And it is one that is far and away more centered on the relationships between Jedi Masters and their Padawans, Jedi Knights and each other and what they do. And in the story, the Jedi Knight who is off on their own is seen as the oddball. They are seen as the odd one out. Whereas most others in the High Republic, something they play on a lot is very few, relatively speaking, very few Jedi actually live and do their training and things on Coruscant. Most Jedi in the galaxy are like after their their youngling period where they're like they do the first part that gets them ready to then start prepping to maybe become a Padawan. They most leave Coruscant and they end up on an outpost across the entire galaxy. So most Jedi never even see Coruscant. They never see the temple on Coruscant. It's not a place they ever go to. They go to I'm blanking on the name of the planet they go to get Kyber crystals, but other than that, they never go to Coruscant. And so they are surrounded by other Jedi who live and run the outpost, centered only on helping people on that planet or in the sector that they're in, and that's it. So all of the stories are built around the interpersonal relationships of these different Jedi working together to the common goal of the Jedi. And I think, to your point, Joanna, it's one of the many reasons I hadn't thought about it the way you described, but it's one of the many reasons I really love these new stories because nothing about it is about the individual. There's one key character that's introduced. His name is Elzar Mann. He's really good friends with two other prominent Jedi that are both Jedi Masters and who have, by all accounts, wildly successful careers. But he's still a Jedi Knight because he just hasn't been elevated to the rank of Master because he won't play by the rules. But he is seen as the odd person out because the fact that he won't really play well with others. He won't form these relationships. He won't go work together with people regularly. He doesn't want to do it. So he's actually in the story kind of considered the odd character out, whereas most don't do that. I think that's really interesting because it means they're like some of the main guy I have sitting back actually on the shelf back here called Edge of Balance centers around a Jedi outpost on another planet and how the Masters and the other Jedi and even some of the Jedi who are there who like are afraid to pick up a lightsaber. They're like, I don't fight. I'm an archivist. Like there's at least one character like, I'm an archivist. I need to get out of here when there's fighting happening because I'm not somebody who can help you with that. Or one that just helps with medicine and things like that and heals people, but has no interest in even ever picking up a lightsaber. So it's like a whole different set of ways to think about these people, these characters. They're not all what we see in the Skywalker saga of all of them have lightsabers. They're all well-trained and they fight whenever they need to. That's not what these characters are in the High Republic. So I think it really helps what you're describing, the get away from the rugged individual trope and make that sort of like, that's not what we're idolizing here. What we're idolizing is people who connect with the Force and work together with each other, which I think is really, really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So I will. I love your take on this. I will say that you're always so inspiring when you talk about the High Republic, and what it means to you. And I mean, obviously, you've got that growing collection that's behind you.
Yes.
And I just want to say that it is one of these things where I'm always excited when we're able to talk about books. Because I always want to see more and more people reading, and it's so great to be able to see that back there as well too, and that it's not just the movies and the comic books, but that there's so many entry points that you can.
There really are. So. And by the way, I wanted to throw up this comment: aggressively relaxing. Thank you for joining us. And I see you search comics and you came across this, so thank you. And yes. In part, we've been talking High Republic. We've been talking San Diego Comic-Con, a little bit of a breakdown. There was a lot of High Republic stuff that was announced. It was primarily in book form, which is, other than the Acolyte, which takes place at the end of the High Republic, most of it was around the books and the comics, which it's been a great show. We're going to be wrapping up here in a second, but thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. It was great. And I think there's so much more we get to talk about, but we're going to put that on pause.
That's right.
Ryan's voice a break. Yeah. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna drop off for the night. We're not gonna be live next Thursday because I'm on vacation, and we're just gonna take a break for a week. But we will be back the week after with a guest from the Dark Side Devious podcast, which will be super awesome. So please join us then. Ryan, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. So we're gonna go San Diego Comic-Con 2023. Kessel Chat's gonna be there. I'm gonna be dressed as Link from the Wind Waker. So all you got to do is, I'm going to be wearing the lobster shirt though. So all you got to do is look for my blue lobster shirt. Nice. And I'm going to have like some crazy, crazy blonde hair. But it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks again to everybody that's joining us. Please remember to leave comments on the things that you'd like us to talk about in the future, and like and subscribe to the channel. It always helps.
Yep. We really appreciate it. All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening, morning, wherever you're located. Thanks for being here, and we will see you all soon.
Hey, bye, everybody.
Cheers.